Has anybody in this room, since the 2016 election, tried to communicate with Congress? All right, keep those hands up. By email, by phone, by fax, by social media. All right, cool, there's some of you. So you know what we're talking about today. But you're not alone. Pew has just recently released a poll that's saying 97% of the American public feels Congress is not responsive to them. And I want to meet the other 3. 97%. However, and this is just an example of some of the things you will see on social media about what happens when people call Congress, it's not good. And this is the story that we know coming into the room. The other side of the story, which is where we spend our time, is here. 94% of congressional staff say they do not even have the tools to be responsive. The polls you see on the right, those are surveys that we've done with House and Senate staffers. This is a two-sided communications breakdown. As you may have heard this morning, this is a 19th century institution using 20th century tools and work processes to try to solve 21st century problems and communicate with us in the 21st century. That's the dynamic and that's the starting place. Now let's show you why. The first problem, skyrocketing volume. Since the 2016 elections alone, incoming volume to congressional offices across all channels is up at least 1,000%. It's enormous. They're using technology that is on average 15 plus years old. So that 1,000% communications volume increase is hitting systems that predate Twilio, that predate Facebook and Twitter and smartphones and grassroots online advocacy. Everything is postal mail. To put a little bit more color on that, and you heard this morning as well, because of the aging telephonic infrastructure in the US Senate, your voicemail box is capped at 300 messages, which can fill up in sometimes less than a second. If you're Dianne Feinstein or Kamala Harris and you represent California in the Senate, you've got 40 million constituents. Yet you have a voicemail box that is capped at 300 messages. Over in the House, it's as low as 35. So an elected official in the House represents about 750,000 constituents, yet their voicemail box is capped at 35. So it's not just the overwhelming volume, and it's not just these legacy systems. These offices just don't have the capacity to keep up. The time and the people. You know that feeling when you come back from vacation and your email inbox is overflowing and you turn on your phone and that little red dot has like 99 messages or more waiting for you? That's the reality of congressional staffers every single day. It's pretty crushing, right? Show up every day with that sort of volume, that sort of workload, and it's always, always, always adding up in the backlog. To give you a little bit more context to the ratio, in the House of Representatives, there's 1 staffer for every 50,000 people. Let that sink in. Like, what business would do customer engagement with that sort of ratio? In the Senate, it varies widely. Obviously, there are smaller states and larger states, but using California again as the example, Senator Feinstein or Senator Harris's office has 1 staffer for every 2.6 million Californians. So you're in charge of channeling the voices of 2.6 million Californians into very complicated and fast-moving federal policy. How do we know all this stuff? You don't have to take my word for it as a recovering congressional staffer. After the 2016 elections, we surveyed the field and we saw the problems and the volume going up, the technology breaking, voicemail boxes filling up and people getting rejected and having their voices silenced. And we said, the world needs to know this problem. Like, this has just gotten so bad. Everybody needs to know what it's like to be inside the system, because people much like yourselves in this room who are positioned with technology products and services to improve the situation just don't know what's going on in there. So we did user research. This is the first time anyone had ever applied user-centered design thinking to congressional offices. You can check it out at v2v.opengovfoundation.org. We had a 4-person user research team that spent 4 months embedded in 20 congressional offices, House and Senate, Republican, Democrat, male and female members, representing rural and urban areas. We tried to get as representative a sample as possible. And across the board, we measured everything. What systems are they using? When a letter comes in, what happens next? When a social media post comes in, what happens next? What are the workflows? What are the pain points? And then turning that around, what are the product and service opportunities? And baseline metrics so you know if you're succeeding or not to improve the institution. Who are these staffers? This is one. This is Matt. Matt works for Congressman Mark Takano, who represents California's 41st Congressional District. Shout out to Riverside, Paris, anybody from Southern California. Matt is actually the very first person to use the very first prototype of the very first cloud communications platform in Congress, Article 1. And that happened just after Signal last year, to give you a sense of how far we've come. We put it into Matt's hands, and what Matt is doing there right now, he likes it so much he's showing it off to his fellow Democratic staffers in the House and the Senate. So let me tell you a little bit more about Matt. Matt is a digital native, obviously in his early 20s, and he's working his first job out of college. He's very inspired, he's driven, he's curious, and he's relentlessly optimistic, if you couldn't tell already. Sort of straight out of the West Wing, and not really a House of Cards type character. His job is to be the funnel. He is in charge of incoming constituent communications, but he wears dozens of hats. Context shifting, dozens of times or more during a given day. The congressman needs an errand run. If a constituent shows up and needs a tour. If the water bubbler is empty and someone needs to put in a new jug, all of that falls on Matt as this junior frontline staffer whose first job is supposed to be channeling incoming communications. Matt's learning on the job in real time. He started about 1.5 years ago with no formal training. He has no ongoing professional development opportunities, and he operates without any established success metrics or KPIs. So Matt's doing the best he can with no baseline, no success measures, and no training. Matt's frustrated, although you can't tell it by the smile, because most of his job involves manual effort and duplicative effort. He uses those 15-plus-year-old paper-based systems and a response workflow that is built for postal mail. And he's even more frustrated because he knows, Matt knows, he's not stupid. He knows how much time he's wasting every day, and he knows there's a better way to do this. Matt's also overwhelmed. In Matt's short time on the job, he's seen the volume of incoming communications go up 1,000%. But he knows that within that 1,000%, those are real people, right? They're calling, they're faxing, they're emailing. Matt deeply wants to help them. He knows they're individuals with really important issues to bring to the congressman. Matt just can never keep up. Yet in spite of all of these pain points and barriers, Matt is still excited. He's hungering for tools to do the job, and he knows what that technology is like because he has it in his pocket and in his home computer. Matt is our first user and one of the most awesome congressional staffers you will ever find, and he's the person who's on the other end of the phone when you call Congress.